Audiobook Academy Biography presents William Thomson, Baron Kelvin. William Thomson, Baron Kelvin, commonly known as Sir William Thomson, 1866–92, was a Scottish engineer, mathematician, and physicist, born June 26, 1824, Belfast, County Antrim, Ireland, now in Northern Ireland. Died December 17, 1907, Netherhall, near Largs, Ayrshire, Scotland, who had a major impact on the scientific thinking of his generation. Thomas Thomson, a British physicist who was knighted and elevated in the peerage for his contributions to engineering and physics, was one of a select few who helped create the basis of modern physics. To name just a few of his accomplishments, he played a key role in the formulation of Newton's second law of thermodynamics, the Kelvin temperature scale, the dynamical heat theory, the mathematical analysis of electricity and magnetism, as well as the foundational ideas for the electromagnetic light theory, the determination of the Earth's age through geophysics, and groundbreaking hydrodynamics work. In the 19th century, his theoretical work on submarine telegraphy and inventions for use on submarine cables benefited Britain in gaining a prominent position in the world of communications. Thomson's scientific and engineering writings matched his exuberant demeanor. When he was a student at Cambridge University, he won the university championship in single-seater rowing shell racing and was awarded silver sculls. While he spent most of his adult life on the continent and in the U.S., he was an ardent traveler. Later in life, he would travel back and forth between his London and Glasgow homes. In the course of laying the first transatlantic cable, Thomson put his life at risk multiple times. His worldview was predicated on the idea that all phenomena that produce force, such as electricity, magnetism, and heat, are the product of unseen material in motion. He was one of the first physicists to reject the idea that forces were generated by immeasurable fluids. Thomson, on the other hand, found himself at odds with the positivistic attitude that would later pave the way for quantum mechanics and general relativity in the 20th century, despite his tenacious adherence to his original belief. His consistent worldview eventually caused him to be seen as an outlier in the scientific community. However, Thomson's constancy allowed him to adapt a few basic principles to a variety of research topics. The 19th century science that saw physical change as an energy-related phenomenon was greatly aided by his integration of hitherto unrelated fields of physics, including heat, thermodynamics, mechanics, hydrodynamics, magnetism, and electricity. In addition, Thomson was the first to suggest that different forms of energy could be mathematically compared. Sir Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein are both examples of 19th century physics' greatest synthesizers of energy theories, and he is in the same position in the 19th century. These amazing synthesizers laid the groundwork for the next major leap in science. Early years. There were 7 people living in the Thomson household, and William was the 4th kid born. When he was just 6 years old, his mother died. As a textbook author and professor of mathematics at the University of Glasgow, his father, James Thomson, taught his boys the most up-to-date mathematics, most of which had not yet been incorporated into the British university curriculum at that time. As a result of his father's extremely intimate bond with his subservient son, William developed an outstanding mind. When William, then 10, and his brother James, then 11, enrolled at Glasgow University in 1834, they were the youngest students there. Jean-Baptiste Joseph Fourier's path-breaking The Analytical Theory of Heat, which employed abstract mathematical approaches to the investigation of heat transfer through any solid object, was lent to William by one of Thomson's teachers. Fourier's work was under attack by British scientists when Thomson published his first 2 essays, at the age of 16 and 17. Thomson was the first to suggest that Fourier's arithmetic could be used to the study of other types of energy, such as fluid motion or electricity flowing over a wire, despite its original focus on heat movement. For his essay An Essay on the Figure of the Earth, in which he displayed extraordinary mathematical skill, Thomson earned numerous accolades at Glasgow University. At the age of 15, he won a gold medal. Thomson used this essay as a source of scientific ideas throughout his entire life. Only months before he died of cancer, his final reading of this piece took place. Thomson began his studies at Cambridge in 1841 and received a BA degree with great honors in 1852. As a young man, he was given a copy of an essay on the application of mathematical analysis to the theories of electricity and magnetism by George Green in 1845. Thomson drew his worldview and his groundbreaking synthesis of the mathematical relationship between electricity and heat from this work and Fourier's book. In order to augment his theoretical education with hands-on experience, Thomson moved to Paris after graduating from Cambridge and worked in the laboratory of physicist and chemist Henri Victor Regnault. In 1846, the University of Glasgow's natural philosophy, later physics, chair became vacant. William Thomson was unanimously elected to the office at the age of 22 after his father launched a meticulously planned and vigorous campaign. Thomson stayed at Glasgow for the rest of his career, despite Cambridge's enticements. In 1899, at the age of 75, he announced his retirement from his university chair after 53 years of productive and fulfilling service. He claimed he was doing this to make place for younger men. There is a belief that all theories of matter and energy will eventually merge into a single, comprehensive theory, according to Thomson. It didn't matter to him how long it took to get there, the objective of a unified theory was still important to him. Experiments revealing the interdependence of kinds of energy were Thomson's foundation for his belief. Electromagnetism and light had been proved to be connected by the middle of the 19th century, and Thomson had demonstrated by mathematical analogy that hydrodynamic phenomena had a relationship with an electric current running through wires. Mechanical motion and heat were also linked, according to James Prescott Joule, whose theory laid the groundwork for the field of thermodynamics. Thomson first heard Joule's idea of heat and motion interconversion during a British Association for the Advancement of Science conference in 1847. Contrary to commonly held belief at the time, heat was considered an imponderable substance, caloric, and so could not be considered a form of motion, as Joule asserted. Thomson was willing to debate the ramifications of the new idea with Joule, who was open-minded enough to do so. The relationship between heat and mechanical motion fit well with Thomson's own understanding of the origins of force at the moment, therefore he was ready to hold back judgment. When Thomson published his dissertation on the dynamic idea of heat in 1851, he gave Joule's theory a public acknowledgement and cautious acceptance. As a key step toward unifying scientific theories, Thomson's essay includes his own interpretation of the second law of thermodynamics. It was also during his time as a student at Cambridge that Thomson began working on his studies of electricity and magnetism. In subsequent years, James Clerk Maxwell read all of Thomson's papers on magnetism and electricity and accepted Thomson as his mentor. When Maxwell attempted to combine all that was known about how electricity, magnetism, and light all interacted, he came up with a tremendous electromagnetic theory of light. Thomson's work was the inspiration for Maxwell's hypothesis, and he freely accepted this. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Thomson made a significant impact on the field of science. Faraday, Fourier, Joule, and others were among those whose ideas he advanced. Thomson derived generalizations from experimental results through the use of mathematical analysis. As a result of his work, the dynamic theory of energy came into being. Sir George Gabriel Stokes, Hermann von Helmholtz, Peter Guthrie Tait, and James H. Joule were among the other notable scientists with whom he worked. Hydrodynamics was one of the fields in which he made significant advances in collaboration with his colleagues. The mathematical similarity between heat flow in conductors and the flow of electricity in conductors was invented by Thomson. A dispute about the feasibility of building a transatlantic cable impacted the path of Thomson's work in a significant way. For the first time in his life, Stokes, a longtime science writer, requested an explanation of the apparent delay in an electric current traveling through a long wire. The mathematical theory of electricity and the uniform motion of heat in homogeneous solid bodies was cited by Thomson in his response, 1842. An effective way to analyze the difficulty of carrying telegraph messages over the proposed 3,800-mile, 4,800 kilometers, cable was suggested by Thomson's use of a mathematical parallel between heat flow and electric current flow. If you want to know how fast current travels in an electrical cable, you can use the equations he developed for heat flow through wires. The Atlantic Telegraph Company's head electrician, E.O.W. Whitehouse, responded to Thomson's response to Stokes by publishing a rebuttal. As far as the directors were concerned, Whitehouse's contention that practical experience invalidated Thomson's theoretical findings prevailed for some time. The early cable-laying excursions were dangerous, and Thomson was principal consultant notwithstanding their disagreement. Thomson invented the mirror galvanometer, a telegraph receiver, in 1858 for use on the Atlantic wire. Almost all of the world's submerged cables were equipped with the gadget, which he eventually modified and dubbed the siphon recorder. Finally, the Atlantic Telegraph Company's board of directors fired Whitehouse, embraced Thomson's cable design recommendations, and opted for the mirror galvanometer. In recognition of Thomson's achievements, Queen Victoria knighted him in 1866. William Thomson, Baron Kelvin's later years. The transatlantic cable laid by Thomson led to his involvement in the design and building of undersea cables during the period of rapid expansion that resulted in the creation of a global telegraph communication network. Thomson was able to buy a 126-ton boat in a baronial manor after becoming a wealthy man. Geophysical problems involving tides, the form of the Earth, atmospheric electricity, ground temperature investigations, the Earth's rotation, and geomagnetism were among Thomson's interests in science. As a result, he became involved in the debate over Charles Darwin's evolutionary theory. Aside of the angels in Darwin's War, Thomson argued against him. Darwin and other uniformitarians maintained that the Earth and life had evolved over an indefinite period of time, during which the forces of nature acted exactly as they do now. Thomson rejected this idea. Thomson calculated in 1862 that more than 1 million years ago the Sun's heat and the Earth's temperature were far higher and that these conditions had generated tremendous storms and floods in an altogether different form of flora, based on thermodynamic theory and Fourier's investigations. As a result of his opinions published in 1868, many of Darwin's fans were offended. Responding to Thomson, Thomas Henry Huxley gave a speech on behalf of the Geological Society of London on its 150th anniversary in 1869. Though his theories about the age of the Earth and Sun were incorrect, Thomson was able to make the case that biological and geological theories had to adhere to known physics theories. During a series of lectures on the state of scientific knowledge given at Johns Hopkins University in 1884, Thomson expressed his dissatisfaction with the wave theory of light's inability to explain some events. On his boat, the Lalla-Rookh, he indulged his passion for the sea, which spawned a number of patents, including a compass adopted by the British Admiralty, an analog computer for measuring tides in harbors and producing tide tables for any hour in the past or future, and sounding equipment. To make this and other electrical measuring equipment, he started his own business. A textbook on natural philosophy co-authored with Tate, Treatise on Natural Philosophy, 1867, helped mold the thinking of a new generation of physicists. More letters following Thomson's name than anyone else in the Commonwealth, it was reported. He was awarded honorary degrees from universities throughout the world and praised by engineering and scientific associations. The Royal Society elected him a Fellow in 1851, and he served as its president between 1890 and 1895. Over the course of his career, he authored more than 600 papers and received numerous patents. Scotland, where he had been living for the last few years and where he was laid to rest. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.